Good evening and thank you all for coming. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the GFSB, I wish to thank you all for attending tonight and effectively helping us make our little part of local history in what we believe is the first independently organised leaders' debate focusing purely on business issues. Nearly 6 months ago, our board, in conjunction with various business sectors, worked hard to produce a very own wish list of pro-business measures that would serve as a yardstick for any aspiring future government to take seriously if they undertook to win the business vote. We were pleased to see some of these recommendations make the last budget, such as the reintroduction of early payment discounts for business rates. We also saw the introduction of CCTV, which we had been campaigning for many years. Our voice was partly heard by the powers that be, and it is this voice which is gathered here tonight. One of the Federation's aims is to ensure that the message to any aspiring future government is that looking after the business interest is in everyone's interest in Gibraltar. SMEs are the very fabric of our diverse society and very much the engine of our diverse economy. Yet is this truly appreciated by all? The important contribution that we all make to wealth and job creation for all members of society has to be recognized. All we ask is that our reasonable demands do not fall on deaf ears. We understand that all pressure groups make their own somewhat selfish submissions prior to elections and are quick to offer you all gratuitous advice. Some of these ignore basic principles of what Gibraltar PLC can afford. There is no bottomless pit of cash, as some would try and make us believe. What's next? Summer hours all year round? Sound business principles with business placed at the centre of any government decision-making is essential to Gibraltar's long-term viability. Let us all ram this message home tonight. Without further ado, I now introduce you to our independent moderator, Frank Partridge, who's a highly experienced ex-BBC and ex-Sky News anchorman. Please give him all the support he needs to ensure this debate is a success. Let the debates begin.
Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Stuart. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's not my first time in Gibraltar by any means, and this particular trip has been enlivened by one or two innovations on the Rock, which clearly hadn't been there before. One was a shining new airport terminal that I was able to observe from a distance. And perhaps that subject will come up later on in the evening for one reason or another. And then the other interesting development that I've been able to study are the plans to reform and change and move into the 21st century the whole Gibraltar Broadcasting Corporation. So the developments there have been of great interest to me as a media person, and whichever administration forms the next government here, I would urge them to maintain the improvement of the local media, that includes the press, radio and television, and the internet, because any democratic society needs a vigorous and challenging media, and investment in GBC would be one way to achieve that. It mustn't be allowed to wither on the vine. That's my view. That's as political as I'm going to get tonight, because my job here is not to make any political points, but to listen to the points that are about to be made by the three party leaders. I, as Stuart said, am here purely in a moderating capacity, and I'll do my best to be even-handed as the evening wears on. So let me just run through the shape of it. There are very complicated rules and regulations that have been circulated to all three parties through their agents, and the three leaders had a genial conversation with me and others downstairs just to establish the ground rules. They're very complicated. I think I can just about understand them myself, but luckily there's Stuart and Gemma here to put me right if anything goes wrong. But here, essentially, I have three envelopes with three numbers inside them. And what I'm going to do in a moment is hand an envelope to each of the party leaders, and that will determine the order in which they make their 7.5-minute speeches and then their right of reply or rebuttals that, doing something horrible with a microphone here, that will follow them. The order of events will be determined by the luck of the draw. So we're going to start with the introductory speeches. They last 7.5 minutes. There's a complicated and very expensive timing device that's going to appear on the big screen behind us. Those who read the small print will appreciate that the initial plan was that the candidates would be able to see the timer and the audience wouldn't. For complicated reasons, it's going to be the other way around. You'll see the timer counting down, so will I, but the three-party leaders won't. However, I will be able to give them an indication that their time's running out, and I'll do my best to shut them up within a few seconds of 0 hour. Taking it on from there, and a reminder that if at this juncture you could switch off any mobile phones. I know you're all very important, business people, and that work never stops, but it'd be wonderful if we didn't have intrusions from mobiles throughout the evening. After that, we move into the phase in which each of the three leaders will have their rebuttal opportunity in the same order that's been decided by the lots, and those will be 3 minutes in which they can reinforce their case and answer any allegations, accusations that have been made against them. Then we come to the question and answer session. Now, the GFSB, bless them, and a series of late-night conversations in which the midnight oil was burnt and some intensive breakfast conferences have come up with 8 very carefully worded questions which they would like all 3 of the leaders to answer. I'll do my best to keep them on track and prevent them from straying off to other issues. And because this historic event has been organized by the GFSB, we are very keen that trade issues and business will be at the forefront, both of the questions that the GFSB have prepared and also in the second half of the evening, questions from the floor. That, we hope, will take place after a quick 10-minute refreshment break. We aim to make it last about 45 minutes. I'll try and catch your eye, a la David Dimbleby on Question Time on the BBC, and hope that some of the more salient issues that are troubling you get through to the party leaders. And then after all that, we'll convene downstairs to the exhibition room where there are wine and canopies on offer. So that's about enough from me for now. It's going to be an exciting evening. I'm absolutely sure of it. So let me get this absolutely right and absolutely fair by announcing the 3 party leaders in alphabetical order, starting with the representative of the Progressive Democrat Party, the PDP, which is fielding, I gather, a full house of 10 candidates in the election for the first time, Keith Azzopardi. And next, we have to call him this, the leader of the Gibraltar Social Democrats, the GSD, seeking a 5th election victory as it happens, Peter Caruana. And finally, representing the Gibraltar Socialist Labour Party and Liberal Alliance, apparently I made a mistake on this on GVC last night, leading this alliance into the election for the first time, Fabian Picardo. Two of them have got briefcases and one hasn't. Does that give them an advantage, or I don't know? Gentlemen? This is not a secret ballot.
Surprise. I won the lottery. I won the lottery.
Right, okay, so we have number 1 now. Gemma, sort me out of this. Which is 1? This one, okay. Going number 1. Peter, you're in number 3. And number 2. Right. We also have a small technical challenge, which is that the clock, though highly sophisticated, needs resetting after each speech, and there will be a short pause while we wait for the guys back in the control room to reset it to 0. So bear with us, it's only a few seconds, but although we can land men on the moon, we can't reset this clock faster than 20 seconds at a time. So, just to make it absolutely clear, number one speaker is going to deliver the holder of number one is going to deliver the first 7.5-minute speech, coming up in a moment.
First of all, I'm very grateful for the FSB for inviting me to speak to you about business issues today. And I'm also very glad that Frank, by the way, spoke about GBC initially in the way that he did, because if I now move off script, I've got his precedent for doing so. There are 8 principal headings in the business agenda that was raised by the FSB, ranging from taxation to business costs, trading environment issues, tourism, illegal labor, financial services, public administration. In all of those areas, we will have significant manifesto commitments in the manifesto that we will soon publish. We will have a radical investment in tourism, a reappraisal of products in financial services, and massive investment in business infrastructure. Let me go through these one by one in the time that is available. I can't see the clock, by the way. Okay, I want to go through all of these one by one in the time available, if indeed I can beat the clock. First of all, on taxation, we appreciate that the pressures on the trading sector in understanding and indeed coming to grips with the new taxation legislation. So we're quite sympathetic to that. The motivations for the new act are relevant and are indeed important. But it's also important to ensure that compliant businesses don't end up paying for government inaction for years in relation to non-compliant businesses. And we all know what we're talking about. We all know that there are many businesses out there that owed thousands, and in some cases, many tens of thousands in tax. It's also important, of course, to realize that when radically overhauling the tax system, people need more time to be advised and be aware of the full implications of the changes in the new legislation. And it may be that if we are elected to government, we will consider further amendments to that legislation and give people more time to consider the implication of those changes. It's also important that on business costs, there is much greater consistency when government plans fiscal measures at budget time. And what we mean by that is that we have, for example, criticized a number of budgets for being a mishmash of contradictory measures. So we've said that in some budgets, personal and corporate tax have been lowered, while at the same time, electricity and water charges, social insurance and rates have been increased, which only ends up in neutralizing tax increases, tax reductions, and leads to increases in fixed business cost. While there have been no penal increases in social insurance or utilities this year, this doesn't compensate for the significant rises that there have been over the last 4 years, which total in excess of 30% in some cases. It's important that we return to the days where we do not get annual increases of social insurance. When I was in government, we used to criticize the previous administration for doing so. We, if we are elected to government, are committed not to have annual increases in social insurance, and certainly not to, when we increase social insurance, not to do so on an above inflationary level, because that hits business and hits business very hard, especially at a time when we are in an economic recession, when businesses need assistance. To do so, to add and levy costs on business is counterproductive to recovery during a recession. In the same way that corporate tax was reduced, our view is also that personal tax needs to come down, and we are committed, and we've said so in a recent statement, to reduce personal tax, the top rate of tax, to 20% within the first 12 months of a PDP budget. It's important to foster a culture of business in Gibraltar, and we all know the difficulties that we are facing in terms of banking. There aren't enough banks that provide retail services, the clock has gone, by the way, again, perhaps it can be put back, we would establish a Gibraltar retail bank that would have as its primary focus the promotion of small and medium-sized business. We all know how difficult it is for small business or personal customers to get simple retail accounts or to undertake transactions because there's just not enough competition. Local business suffers the consequences of that lack of competition, and if necessary, the government needs to play a role in taking a stake in a new retail bank that would provide loans to business and be there as a competitor in the open market to assist. Much more must be done to increase business and industrial infrastructure by way of offices, workshops, and industrial space. We will, in our manifesto, be outlining our project for a new town for Gibraltar. This is a project that goes back to our 2007 manifesto. It will be on the east side of Gibraltar, and within that, we will provide commercial and tourism zones. The tourism zone would focus on hotel and resort facilities, marina, water-based sports centres, leisure. The commercial zone would contain a mix of office, storage, and warehousing facilities. That provision, in our view, of industrial space and warehousing on the east side, close to Devil's Tower Road, would then lead to a decongestion and not result in heavy goods traffic going into Gibraltar at all hours throughout the time. It's important also that our utilities and telecoms infrastructure is improved for business. We all know the power cuts that we have been suffering over the last couple of years, and government needs to take a much bigger interest in resolving that issue and ensuring that our power grid is sustainable and robust. Equally, our telecoms infrastructure needs to be much stronger, it needs to be better, it needs to provide faster bandwidth if we are going to be at the cutting edge of competitive business in the 21st century. The one-stop shop is something that will be in our manifesto. We would establish a centralized business center that would encompass representatives from all government departments relating to business activity. We would set up an office of fair trading and in principle are committed to a repeal of the trade licensing regime, which we think now is a hurdle to business more than anything else. We would invest very significantly in tourism. We would have a massive program of investment because we think that that is a key pillar of the economy that is under-resourced and under-invested in. And we would take a number of specific measures that will be in our manifesto, and in the time available, I really don't have time to go through all of them, but I'll highlight a few. A hop-on, hop-off bus, for example. A review of public transport, because we know that the public transport system, and in particular the taxi system, perhaps gives rise to issues that need to be tackled once and for all. An investment in conservation and in site development. Better maritime links, a cruise embarkation terminal, because we think that if we set up a cruise embarkation terminal, the income and revenue that we will get and the jobs that will be created will be far more significant and contribute to the economy, because we're not making enough of the cruise line industry. A beach upgrade policy, better hotels, a school of service excellence in tourism, a policy that we will have of e-government so that we can do business online, because we all know how frustrating it is not to be able to do business online in the 21st century. Zero tolerance on illegal labor, better marketing in financial services and human resources, and a much more vigorous interaction with the business community on financial services. We are a party that is friendly to business. We're friendly to business because we understand the business community, because a lot of our candidates come from business and from the law. We are a party that knows and can deliver on the business agenda, that many of the issues in your business agenda are part of our manifesto. Trust us, we will deliver and deliver improvements to the business community and to all of you. Thank you very much.
Keith, thank you very much, and a difficult start there. Apologies for the technical malfunctions. I'm sure there'll be more later on. That's half the fun of it. And you can't have the 13 seconds you didn't use back, by the way. Right, on to the lucky draw number 2. Fabian, please deliver your 7.5 minutes on how, if returned to power, you would improve life for the business community in Gibraltar. Just wait a moment, if you would, while we reset the clock to 7 minutes, 30 seconds. I'm sure it'll happen. And we can start when you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here tonight. And thank you, board members of the GFSB, for your very kind invitation to address your members. As you know, I was a member of the board of the Federation in the late 90s and in the early noughties, so it's my pleasure to be here today actually addressing the Federation from a different post. I know how important the work that the Federation does is, and all of us should be grateful in the business community and in the political community to have an alternative business voice telling us the things that matter to business. And it's for that reason that we've listened very carefully to the things that you've said. Your business agenda has been one of the required reading points for us, and I want to congratulate you for having taken the time to influence the political process in this way, because I think it's fundamentally important that we should have that input from small businesses. And listen, we have in the preparation of our manifesto for this general election campaign. Well, you will see that we have turned our attention to all the points you have raised. For example, we share your views on the importance of e-government and the need for real investment if that is going to become a reality. You call it a backbone infrastructure of IT, and I think that's a fantastic way of illustrating how important it is. And of course, e-government, if done properly, would have a massive effect on counter hours and the ability of the general public and small businesses to interact with government, to submit documentation to government. We've looked also at the issue of fixed business costs and how these can be addressed so that the cost of doing business in Gibraltar is somehow ameliorated for those who do business here, from online gaming companies to the smaller traders on or off Main Street. Certainly, in our view, the management of social insurance increases has left a lot to be desired in recent years.